Remove border control rule. Firewall rules can be removed via border rule list/remove rule. While rules are added into firewall for processing the network packets, the existing rules in the firewall can also be removed from the firewall. Deleting a rule from firewall could cause a series of impacts. The removal can be done by pressing the button remove associated with that rule. Please notice that you need to restart the server after the firewall setting is changed. Firewall issues on instant messengers. Blocking the traffic of instant messengers like MSN Messenger, Yahoo Messenger, AIM, ICQ, QQ, or Skype or else seems a serious issue in some places. Here, we are not going to have a debate if this type of traffic should be blocked. Some might argue that this kind of tools promote the communication between people. Some might argue that this type of applications chew up the system resources, network bandwidth, human concentration on work, or else. To block it or not to block it, we are not going to provide answer here. We just briefly describe this type of traffic from instant messenger and leave the rest of the work to you on how to design your network with the available tools at hand. In old times, NAT was not so popular, so that some instant messengers would just let the two end users to exchange directly after the sign-on processes. With the popularity of the deployment of NAT with Firewall, those instant messengers were being developed with more sophisticated schemes for detecting the network topology or methods, e.g. the PCs are with direct NAT or using combining UDP or TCP packets to send out initial outbound messages, or establishing a lot of super nodes via some automatic mechanism so that the rest of clients can have the initial node for starting communication. Blocking those instant messengers mentioned above cannot use simple schemes like by closing 4 or 5 ports or putting some IP addresses into blacklist to block them. Some of those schemes might have worked initially, but it is not once for all solution. Those instant messengers are evolving too. Nowadays, some of the instant messengers are scanning all the ports that can be used. They even use TCP port 80 or 443, that is originally reserved for HTTP or HTTPS, and encrypted the packets by using proprietary protocols. Moreover, even the target IP address for initial outbound connection is changing. It is a moving target. Some vendors just catch some signatures of certain instant messengers by doing traffic analysis and try to block them based on the live traffic collected. But as mentioned, this is not once for all solution. So, how to block this type of traffic? We can think in this way. All the port numbers below 1024 are reserved for IANA, Internet Assigned Numbers Authority, an organization for number assignment on Internet. So, if an instant messenger is doing port scanning, it will scan the ports above 1024 at first, i.e. 1025 to 65,535. Thus, just block the outgoing traffic from LOC to net with destination port above 1024, you can use 1024 in the field destination port. How about those instant messengers using destination port 80 or 443? Block all of the outgoing traffic from LOC to net with destination port 80 or 443. You might say, this solution is not acceptable because you would like to use HTTP, you do not want to block HTTP traffic because of those instant messengers. This answer is, using HTTP proxy, and this HTTP proxy has to be deployed on the firewall once you have those outgoing traffic blocked. And you have to force all of those stations inside the firewall to use proxy. In other words, traffic from LOC to net is not allowed, only some ports from LOC to FW are allowed, and then FW to net by using proxy. What if some instant messengers are using TCP port 25, that is for email? You can just block all the outgoing traffic with the exception by only allowing some servers to have access to the internet. That is network planning issue, and you might need a careful planning in advance. There are some other complicated scenarios that you can use once you understand the basic principles mentioned above. For example, you still can put HTTP proxy or mail server on the machines inside firewall instead on the firewall if you allow only the machines for mail server, and HTTP proxy can have the outgoing packets. For those planning and deployment issues, you also need to think about if it is easy to maintain the daily operation for flexibility or scalability of the network. Furthermore, you might want to block all the outgoing TCP/UDP traffic. The simple idea is, block all traffic by default. If some people need to access outside, use the corresponding proxy servers so that we will have precise control on network access. Example, block all the outgoing traffic with destination TCP ports above 1024. This is an example by blocking all the outgoing traffic with the destination ports above 1024. It can be done via border rule, add rule, action, drop source, LOC destination, net protocol, TCP destination port, 1024, please note : after 1024. We will provide some examples for how to do network planning for your office network at the end of this document. HTTP proxy. In network terminology, proxy usually stands for the following function: you try to access a host, but you do not want or you are not allowed to access that host directly. You have to connect to an agent, and let the agent fetch the data from your target host, S. Usually, this agent is known as proxy. There are many kinds of proxy servers to perform different functions. One of the advantages of proxy is, it alleviates unnecessary traffic if it has good cache mechanism. Another benefit is, it has a central control of certain type of traffic so that some rules only need to be set in the proxy. Proxy can also be used when a server has restrictions on the limit of the clients, for example, the IP address of the clients, the number of clients, and so on. We do not introduce that usage here. The function of the proxy here is mainly for web traffic, HTTP. Originally, it is intended to route HTTP request from VPN to access the network elsewhere. Web caching. The web caching here is to store HTML pages that are previously accessed before so that the clients do not have to connect to the remote hosts if the same pages are requested. However, to cache the result of HTTP request of people, you have to let people know how to connect this HTTP proxy server. If you have setting in border proxy web caching as follows, HTTP port for using proxy, 3128. This implies that the proxy server is listening at TCP port 3128 of this machine. If the LAN interface is with IP address 192.168.1.1, then you can ask people to use 192.168.1.1 TCP port 3128 as the proxy setting in the web browser. Please refer to the example at the end about how to set proxy in your Windows web browser. Furthermore, if the virtual Ethernet interface created by VPN is with IP address 172.16.38.1 on VPN server along with HTTP proxy, the people in VPN should just use 172.16.38.1 TCP port 3128 if they want their HTTP requests back to the office to reach the destination they want to visit. For using this web proxy, border proxy web caching, the TCP port needs to be specified so that the clients can use this port for their HTTP traffic. You might want to force all the HTTP traffic going through this HTTP proxy even if they do not set proxy in their web browser. This can be done by using redirect action in the firewall to force all the normal HTTP traffic go to this proxy port so that each client does not have to set HTTP in the web browser. Use border rule add rule, action, redirect source, LOC destination, 3128 protocol, TCP destination port, 80, source port, original destination IP, 172.16.9.1, 172.16.9.1 is firewall's LAN IP address. Please note, in front of 172.16.9.1, it implies if the original destination IP address is not 172.16.9.1. And do not forget to check the box for transparent proxy at border proxy web caching. Cache size is another important parameter. If you set the cache size too large, a lot of web pages will be accumulated in the proxy server. Every time when there is a request, the proxy server has to look into the cache and check if it should fetch from the remote side. It depends on the access pattern of your traffic to choose appropriate cache size. You also can specify the network that is allowed to access this proxy. This is to prevent the usage of the proxy from somewhere you are not aware of. Or you want block certain types of users by their IP addresses in the subnet, you can just use this function here. This is to block the users so that those users cannot access HTTP proxy. In other words, if this is the only way to browse internet in your office environment, those machines in that network cannot web browser to browse internet. For those machines allowed to access the internet, you might want to block some websites so that they cannot view the content of those websites. In that case, you should use the method introduced below. URL access screening. The HTTP access to some URLs can be blocked via border proxy URL screening. You can just specify the domain name to block a class of URL belonging to that domain. All the URLs extending from that domain will not be accessed by the clients of the proxy. The blocked URL domains will be listed so that all the related URLs will not be viewed by the clients. For example, if you put nodomain.com in the list, for URL like www.nodomain.com, www.nodomain.com/help.html, mimi.nodomain.com, ddd.nodomain.com will all be blocked. Example, how to set proxy in web browser. The following is the step for set HTTP proxy in Microsoft Internet Explorer. Select Tools-Internet Options, it shows a menu as follows. Click Connections on the top. Click LAN setting at the bottom after you switch to connections. Up to this stage, you click the box for Use Proxy Server. You can just ignore those wording about VPN setting in Microsoft Internet Browser. It refers to the VPN solution from Microsoft, not the VPN package we provide along with out software. You might also use the other web browsers like Firefox, Chrome, or Safari. They have similar mechanism to set HTTP proxy.